Now it's starting. Okay, hold on. Okay, you're set to go.
Okay, thanks, Paul. All right, so this is our fourth Women Lead Lunch and Learn series by the League of Women Voters of Eastern Upper Peninsula. Just to remind folks, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, which means that we do not support or oppose candidates or parties. We do voter education, we do advocacy, we are involved in politics, we are a political organization, but we are a nonpartisan political organization. I want to just remind people why we started the Women Lead series. After our local league was kind of we were diving into a directory of the Eastern Upper Peninsula, and one thing that we noticed in our research is that there aren't a lot of women serving in top leadership positions in our area. And when I say top leadership positions, I mean everything from school board chairs or president of school boards to township supervisor, and all the way up. And so we really did notice that there is a gender gap that is in our area, and arguably even in the entire UP. And so we wanted to create a space that helped brought women information at their fingertips and brought inspirational stories to help motivate those that maybe have resisted or maybe not envisioned themselves in a leadership role, but they certainly absolutely have the capacity to lead. And so we've had 3 other interviews so far. So I recommend visiting our YouTube channel and going to our website where we have a Women Lead resource page. And if you haven't visited that, go to lwveup.org to find all of those videos, as well as our Facebook page. But today I really am very, very excited because we have Michigan House Representative Sara Cambensy, who represents the 109th District. So that is in the Upper Peninsula, that's over the Marquette area. And if you read her profile on the House Dem webpage, Representative Cambensy, you are really, I mean, even aside from your leadership position in Lansing and for Marquette, are very inspirational. As me being a young woman, I look at your education and the things that you're interested in, and it's just awesome. So I cannot wait to start asking you and picking your brain of how you do all of this and what got you involved. So thank you so much for taking the time for this hour to be with us so we can learn from you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I guess I want to go ahead and kick it off right away is what inspired you to get involved in politics? We had an interview with Dr. Schaefer O'Connell, and she talked about how a lot of women don't get involved. It often takes between 5 and 7 times for a woman to be asked before she'll actually even consider getting involved and running for office. So what was it? Did you need 5 asks, and what inspired you to get involved?
Yeah, there's probably 2 things that stand out in my mind. And, one was certainly watching my father be very involved, kind of on the peripheral of local politics. Didn't ever want to serve himself, but certainly would go and speak up at meetings. And, when he did, I feel like people listened. And from that, growing up, there would be various people always asking my dad, why don't you step up and run? Why don't you step up and run? And as a small business owner, he just said, you know what, I'll go say my piece, but I really don't want to be in that role. Fast forward to, my early 30s, and it was actually a woman here in the community who was serving on our city's planning commission who said, gee, you worked for your dad. He's a land surveyor and engineer. You've done plans, site plans, plan review. We could use another person on the commission, and I'd like another woman to serve. So, 14 years ago now, I got asked, and it was by a woman, and I didn't think twice. I went down and put my resume in to, apply for it, and it started from there.
Oh, wow. I guess that really just shows the power of women supporting other women and really reaching out and saying, I see something in you, please run.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's really great. I think that really speaks to all of what we're trying to accomplish here is we all need to have each other's back. So that's fantastic.
Yes. Yep.
So what was it like to run your first campaign? Did you have any training or support? I know that you're with the Democratic Party, so did the party support, offer support? How does someone who, you watched your dad, you're inspired by dad, but how do you run your first campaign?
So interestingly enough, being on the Planning Commission, which was appointed, we were doing a look at our city charter. And so there's an election for the Charter Commission coming up. And from being on the Planning Commission, I had several men who were twice my age ask me, you should step up and run for this. You'd be good. You're a critical thinker. And so here I am, in my 30s, putting my name on a ballot with a lot of influential people, in my community that saw something in me, and again, kind of gave me that sense of comfort that, I could kind of put my name on the ballot and compete. And let me tell you, when I saw the ballot that came out, and these are, past 4-time mayors of the city, retired bankers, just, people who have a lot of community service behind them. I mean, I was feeling like, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And, we took 9 people and I came in 7th. So I was on the commission. And from there, that year I spent on there, again, there was another previous mayor who said, I'm going to run for the city commission. I think you should run with me. There's 2 seats. And again, went on the city commission. And at the time I was the only woman on the commission. So from there, Sarah Reynolds ran right after me and got on the commission. And now, if you look at the Marquette City Commission, we do have a lot more women on there. And so for the first time ever, there's a majority of women on that 7-person city commission.
And a woman. We actually already interviewed Mayor Smith, and that was phenomenal. She's just a very warm and candid person and very honest. So we, yes, women bring that.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. And so I think, so one of the things I just kind of heard out of that is, one, again, it's about the people, around you helping to, make you feel confident and that they got your back. But also I think the importance probably of, you started off, with planning. And so you kind of get an understanding there, you already engaged in politics, through your dad's activity. And then it sounds like because you're in various rooms of power, you're also learning who people are of influence, and ensuring probably that they're in your circle, would you say?
I wouldn't even say in my circle, but, I had 10 years of local government before I, stepped up to run and got elected to state government. And there's so many advantages to that. I think a lot of people look at a job like a state legislator and say, well, that's appealing, or, that's something I want to do. But when you look back at, I guess, all the work I put in to get to where I am today, I learned a lot along the way. And I think that came into my candidacy for state representative, and having those skills, being able to work with people, and certainly not being afraid to voice my own opinion or vote differently, than the rest of my colleagues. And I will say that in the 2017 special election, it was a 4-way race. And some of the things that stood out to people, was that I had that voting record locally, and people could point to that and say, this is a district that has never elected a woman to the state representative 109th seat. And they could say, okay, you know what? She has a track record. I've seen her do good things. I've seen her stand up for the right things. And I think that truly, in the end, is kind of what put me where I am today.
Yeah, I definitely could see it. You have a proven track record. And so people are going to be able to go back on that, as opposed to somebody who hasn't done it. It's more of a risky vote for them when they're going to put their check in the box. So, all right, very cool.
I should, if I can just add one thing to this, because I think this is fascinating. I never ran on being a woman for this state representative seat. I just, Hillary Clinton just lost in 2016. I watched everyone kind of go from their Bernie support up here, at least if you're a a Democrat or an independent to, some of them voting for Donald Trump. And it was really a time when, I didn't really want to push that narrative. I wanted people to pick me as the best candidate. And again, I still have people who come up to me and say, gosh, you do such a great job. I wish my guy friends would vote for you, but they won't vote for you because you're a woman. And it's a very real thing that, again, I don't think it's a lot of people, but in a rural place like the UP, in my district, even that a lot of people consider still a blue district, you do get that feedback.
Yeah, that is really, I mean, that has to be heartbreaking to hear, because you're like, but I have the proven record. Like, I have been serving you honorably. What more do I have to do? Like,
yeah, you can, and I think when you're in politics, the best thing about those 10 years in local government is I got to work up and kind of develop that thick skin where you're going to get comments like that. You're going to get people that don't like you and that didn't vote for you and that give you a hard time. And, when I hear people say that about not voting for me because I'm not a man, it kind of gives me a little push to keep going and try and win their vote and prove that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, but I can do things and hopefully serve you just as good as any man could.
Yeah. Well, that's still, just for a fellow woman, that just is, that is a bit frustrating. That's the best word I can come up with right now. I guess I'd like to continue on with that train, I suppose. So when people they have criticism of you, so not just maybe that you're a woman and these are just voters that are resistant, but just like, even just like when you support a bill or, I don't know, something along those lines, or just, even maybe who you are versus maybe the person that they wanted to win. How do you take that? So you said that you have thick skin, but maybe for those like myself who maybe doesn't have such thick skin, how do you take that from the public, and how do you balance concerns or priorities of your fellow legislative members? So like you have to walk a fine line, right? Because of the position that you're in, and you might have people in the public saying one thing, but the reality when you're down in Lansing could be a totally different thing. And you might be criticized one side or the other. So how do you balance and navigate that?
The best advice I ever got was from my dad when I told him I'm going to step up and run for this seat. And, after the disappointments and him saying, gosh, it's such a thankless job. Why do you want to do that? He came right back and said, if you are going to go through with this and you want to do this job, he said, you better remember that you work for everyone above you, all the people that voted you in, not your own interests and not special interests. And I think that always is in the back of my head. So when there is a difficult vote, when my own party is going in a different direction, it grounds me to vote my district and not vote what I think Sara wants to see, but really, just to remind myself that I am here to really just represent. And I think when you do that, and I've been consistent, I've been honest, and I've been fair, that's how I can win a district that Joe Biden only won by 28 votes. I received 2,700 more votes than Joe Biden and 7,600 more votes than my opponent. And, I think that's one of the most critical things, if I can put this out there, especially, being a woman in this level, state level government, but also being a Democrat, where in the top 3/4 of the state, there isn't another Democrat close to me. I just really think the power of knowing what my job is, knowing, that I'm here to be the voice of the people, not the party, not myself or not a special interest group. I think that is the only way you have a Democrat sitting in this seat in the 109th, because otherwise it's 50-50. And, the way politics are going, I think rural America feels left behind. And so it's harder than ever to kind of stay grounded and humble, and remember really what my job title is and kind of where my boundaries are with what I am charged to do.
Yeah. I think that I would probably think that also that you started your career at the local level, that you'd also helped with those extra votes, because they know you, right? They can
Yes.
trust you, and they see that
Yep.
reputation. So I think it really, it's hard to build trust. I think that's probably one of the hardest things in politics, especially right now, is building
Yes.
trust. And so you do that, I think, locally with those relationships early on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that, we'll keep going with this. So what was the hardest part about running for office? And I imagine you're already going to say, but especially running in the UP, what is the hardest part about running? So for a lot of people have never, just the idea of campaigning is very, very scary. And they don't really know where to get started. So I guess to start off with, when you're running a state level campaign, what is the first things that are going into your mind? And then what are some of the hardest things that you might have to give a little extra attention to?
Sure. And I can tell you, when I ran, even after 10 years of local experience, when I ran my first campaign for a state race, I had no idea how different that would be, just from, a city race versus a state level race. And it was everything from raising money to, really making sure I'm talking about the issues, not just in the city of Marquette and not just in Marquette County, but Elgin County, Schoolcraft County, Luce County. It was a lot to kind of take in and be ready for, that I'm still not convinced any candidate truly would understand that unless they were actually working for a legislator previously, or, part of the state party that focuses on elections, because especially if you haven't spent a lot of time outside of your county, or, you're focused on those city politics, it can be a lot different in the UP and in such a rural area that, it takes you a while to get to know the people, get to know the area, and get to know what their issues are. So, right now we have 52 Democrats in the state house. Everyone else's district, 51 Democrats, fits inside of mine geographically. And everything that I had to do or deal with was so much different than even our state party could provide, that I felt many times I was kind of going it alone. And I had to make those decisions on whether or not the state was providing me with the best campaign advice, or if I should listen, to my local circle. And in the end, I listened to my local circle a lot more up here than I did the state party, just knowing that, again, being born and raised here, a lot of people feel differently about things, even though we've had a lot of Democrats up here, in the last couple decades. It's very different. So.
Yeah. So when you say about your circle, I've had advocacy training in the past in other states. And when we refer to, I don't know if this is the same for you, but is the local circle like the kitchen cabinet where you have your most trusted advisors?
Your most trusted advisors. At that point too, when you're going into different counties, like you have to up here for all the seats, it's really finding those people that believe in you, trust you, and that you trust them. And, having that it's again, the reason why, I was able to get an edge over some of the other candidates, is because people connected me with others in those counties that had a lot of respect themselves. And so building your team like that, if I didn't do that and I didn't make those connections outside of Marquette, I wouldn't be here either.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess that really tells you that that's a make or break part of a campaign, is one, finding influencers in all the various townships and counties, and then really building those relationships probably early on, I would imagine, because of all of the miles that you're going to have to transverse over the campaign period. You want to make sure that you have started this relationship building early on.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you make those initial contacts though? Because they are so far away for you.
I had two people that were extremely influential to me. One is a large voting block in the 109th is Forsyth Township. So I had the township supervisor, Joe Bogren, who in the last 2 weeks said, look, another candidate was supposed to come and talk to me and they didn't show up. And, I'm a person out here that can certainly help a candidate. He's been a lifelong Democrat. And I sat down, I went over to his house. A mutual friend introduced us, talked to him for 2 hours. And the next thing I knew, he was, doing testimonials for me. He was going around knocking doors. He was talking to those influential circles of people that made a huge difference. The other one is Joe Paquette in Alger County. When you run for office, you kind of get a list of Democratic voters and those that lean Democrat. And I went down there, met him. He had his tennis shoes on. He said, well, let's go start knocking doors. And I said, great, here's a list. He said, we don't need a list. He said, I know just about everyone and where they live here, and we're just going to go knock every door. And, 10 hours later, we probably hit 3/4 of the doors in the city area. And it was amazing who he knew and the influences, that he had, and the trust that people gave him to trust that he was with the right candidate. So, those connections are invaluable. And you really can't run a race up here unless you personally have those in each county, which is going to be very difficult to find.
Right. Yeah. You, I think it goes back, I'm going to beat this, but goes back to what you were doing locally, that you could come back to and say, this is what I've done. You can trust me. I want to work with you. I want to take our leadership and what we've done to the next level. So it probably has to do with that, but then also just being available. So when someone else doesn't show up for a candidate meet and greet, I'm here. I'm happy to meet. And so just being available to their time instead of, forcing people to be on your time. So.
Yes. Yeah. Locally, when you run and, my run in the city commission certainly helped people get to know me because you get a lot of free media attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the paper a lot. We did have a very controversial topic at that time. We were building the new hospital here in the city, and I was a lone vote against that simply because of the debt and the contract that we ended up putting in place between, the city and the hospital. And I'm absolutely positive it lost me votes, but especially when I got outside of the city of Marquette and outside of Marquette County, anyone who got the Mining Journal or, watched TV6 or whatever said, oh, you're the one who stands up, and tries to push back. And you were standing up to, make sure that the city didn't more than double their debt, the debt load that they carry by going into all of these 30-year contracts. So people were paying attention. And again, that wasn't me out raising money, buying advertisements, putting things on a placard to hand out to people. It was simply doing the work and trying to represent the locals as best I could. So yeah, the local free media attention.
Yeah.
Another
no,
big
that
thing.
makes, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think also that adds to, without you actually saying it, but just being able to research, do your homework. Whatever office that you're at, make sure that you do your homework. Do some deep investigative research on all of these controversial issues so that you can stand firm in whatever vote it is that you decide.
Right. And, having a master's in public administration, with a focus on state and local government, one of my favorite terms I learned about was groupthink. And I was always fascinated about it in school, and, just studying the concept of the good, but also the bad that can happen when you get these commissions or boards or, bodies of either elected or appointed people that kind of look to one person or a small group of people and say, well, they're all voting that way. That must be the right way. I I think having that background was critical for me in even kind of defining myself and setting myself apart from the other candidates in a state primary. I had a lot of people say, I like what you did on the city commission. I like that you stood your ground. I like that you thought about us as the taxpayers and you didn't just go along with it. And so another big, important step that I think as a candidate, and certainly as a woman, felt harder to do, but it was critical to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Yeah. You did mention about free media and campaign finance, fundraising for your campaign. So that's always something that I think a lot of women have a really difficult time making the ask for money. We know that this is, there's been a lot of research and discussions about it over the years about how women are just really apprehensive about asking for money. So how did you jump from not asking to, obviously you have to ask because you're a successful candidate, you made it into the legislature, so you didn't do it for free. You didn't use all your life savings. So how were you able to get people to invest in your candidacy?
This was by far the hardest part for me. And if you look at the 2017 special election campaign finance, I think I raised just over $10,000. And I put $1,000 of my own money in, which I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. It's a lot of money to me, for something that I guess when I look at politics, one of the biggest things I hope we do right now in the country is get the money out of it, because it does not give an equal advantage to the best candidate. And Citizens United has just made everything so much worse. I think it's actually pulled us in a direction where it's all about who can outmessage the other based on the money you raised, based on the polarization. And for me, it's still one of the hardest things I have to do is call and raise money. It gets easier when you have those working relationships, but I can tell you, I stared at the list, of traditional donors, Democratic donors, when I was running in the primary election. And just, I think coming from a family, having a dad who's an engineer, very black and white with his money, feeling that way kind of myself, just very, responsible, but also I feel even a greater debt to be responsible with other people's money. I kind of froze up. And I think that's why I didn't have a lot of donors. I had, my friends, my parents' friends, my circle of people. But when it came to calling others who have traditionally supported Democrats, and I didn't have that personal relationship, very tough. And I can feel for any candidate that is looking to step up to run for office that feels the same way. Because I haven't even quite gotten used to it at this point.
Oh, I was going to say, what is one thing that you would, it sounds like that is an area where we can improve.
Yeah. And, I think too, it comes from having a sense of, if you take money from someone, are they going to ask something of you? If you take it from a certain organization, are they going to expect you to vote a certain way? And, from the money I've taken, I think I've done a pretty darn good job, not letting their money kind of deter where I vote. And, I had a mom who was a union nurse growing up. I worked in the public schools, alongside some of the strongest unions, but I also have a dad who's a small business owner. And I've got that kind of unique past where, and even family structure that hopefully people see that it allows me to look kind of at the big picture of, money and donors. It helps, but it's not to really push you to be a certain way.
Yeah, no, I think as the League of Women Voters, we definitely recognize the issue of campaign finance in Michigan, as well as nationally. We actually here locally, we just had a great forum about money and politics in Michigan, specifically with the Michigan Campaign Finance Network, and so we learned a lot about how much money was in the last election, and it's just continues to climb. And I guess on a side, since we're I'll just put a little plug, is that the league is really asking folks to make sure they reach out to their U.S. Senators about H.R. 1 and getting that passed, which has a provision in there about campaign finance reform. And so that normal everyday people like you can run for office and not have to spend 70% of their time trying to find big donors and corporations to help run the campaigns.
Yep, absolutely.
So thanks for letting me put that plug in there. It's always got to work it. So I know you don't run and you don't serve thinking like forefront as I'm a woman, I'm doing this, but obviously you're a woman. And so that is going to, it brings its own set of like awesomeness, as well as it could be some challenges, because we know that women often have like a second shift. Oftentimes, what people automatically see us and they think, stereotypes coming in. So I guess I want to ask is, how do you balance your personal and your professional goals with being a legislator? Because you have a lot, and just looking at your bio, you're very you're a busy woman. You're quite accomplished. So how are you balancing that with your personal? I think that this is something that prevents a lot of women from wanting to ever get involved, is they feel guilty about getting into the political space because they think it's going to take time away from their family, or it's going to put their family, at the crosshairs of media and opposition. And so how do you balance all of that?
Well, I'm not married and I don't have kids. So there's two things that, unfortunately, they do make a big difference in the time I get to spend on my career and, the focus I can give people in terms of just time every week. And I will tell you that, it is extremely hard. Not only are we, in session, downstate, driving all around our districts, constantly getting phone calls, emails, it's a 7-day-a-week job. And I've seen a lot of colleagues put their families second or third. I've seen a lot of my colleagues miss things that their kids are involved in. And, they might only live an hour away or an hour and a half away downstate. Up here, when I go down on Mondays, I don't come back until Thursday night, where some of my colleagues can at least go back and forth and try to hit some of those things. So if there are any women thinking of running that have young families, there's no time frame when you have to run. But I would say, your family life will suffer. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. If you want to do, I guess, a good job and be the person that in a state level position, at least, people demand that of you. And I think in the UP, people expect you to be at spaghetti dinners. They expect you to be at their Rotary clubs or whatever it is. And if you have any guilt in your stomach, all I can say is, when your kids are grown and out of the house, that's still a great time to run. But you do have to make some decisions and sacrifices. And anyone that's been through a campaign before knows that there's always people that want to run and take your place. So if you're missing events or things like that, it's probably just going to add more stress on you. And again, I don't want to disenfranchise anyone from running for a state position, but there's nothing wrong with starting locally and doing that until, you feel that you don't have to choose one or the other, because it is tough. I miss my dog just going downstate and leaving him with my parents. So.
Well, and I was gonna, when you said you don't have children or a husband, that doesn't mean that you don't have family obligations. It sounds like you're very committed to, to your dad and your mom. And I would imagine that you you all are a tight knit group, and that comes with some responsibility as well, and wanting to maintain strong, family bonds. So,
Yeah.
so this would mean that you, because of your position, that you are really busy and stretched thin. I always like to go, one of my favorite people in American government is Madeleine Albright. And I remember several years ago, I had seen her in a giant Jumbotron doing an interview. And she said something that spoke so deeply to my heart. It was that women can do it all. We can do everything. We just might not be able to do it all at the same time. And so I think that that is so right, because if we try to do it all at the same time, we just circle ourselves around and knot ourselves up in guilt. And so I think what you're saying is right. Now, to be fair, I know a lot of women who serve in legislature have seen them campaigning with twins in the belly and twins in the arms once the babies come out, and they made it, and they did it. And so some women, they have that network and they can do it. And then some of us, like me, for instance, I just can't do it all at the same time. So I can support other women while I do my other roles. So it's okay to support women. That's part of what we need to be doing. So
absolutely.
We did get a couple of questions. So since we're past the half hour, I want to make sure that I get to folks' questions. So one person, Marlene, had said, why not run as an independent? Knowing that your district and what the makeup of it is. And she asked this early on, so it might have been when you mentioned about folks who had supported Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. Why did you choose one party over another, or why one ideology over another?
This is something where just working for the public schools, I'm a huge advocate for education. Just my values. I know some people in my party don't think I am an environmentalist, but growing up here, I really care about the environment. I care about how we use our natural resources. And I went downstate, and it was like a whole different world inside my own party. And again, I think coming from rural Michigan, we have some values that might be a little more conservative than what we see at the national level with the Democratic Party, or even the state level. The urban Democratic agenda is much different than I think even I see here at the local level or the regional level for Democrats. And gun violence is one thing that I point to where it's not neat. I go downstate, and I've supported some gun changes that favor the gun owner. But to me, it's common sense reform. It comes from growing up around responsible gun owners, and gun owners up here that really use them more as tools, whether they hunt, they're living out in the middle of the woods. They, might have to go away from work, and they leave their wife home, and she knows exactly where things are if she's left alone in the house, versus the problems they're facing in a lot of the inner cities that are real. And we do need gun reform to deal with them, but it definitely makes, I think, a lot of people that are more on the progressive end of the party think, why is she even a Democrat? Like, is she just, kind of hanging out here because she has nowhere else to go, or she doesn't want to file as an independent?
Well, actually, I guess I would actually ask the independent question only because I teach college, and I know a lot of my students don't want to align with either. And so, like, why, knowing that we have a large sector of the society that is, they're not traditionally, they're not joiners, right? So they don't want to join anybody, and they don't want to feel like they are boxed into anything. So, and in the UP, it does feel like we have a little bit more flexibility, because it is kind of like a who and how you vote and I mean vote as in issues, not necessarily by party. So why, I guess the question, going back to Marlene's question, is why choose one of the parties as opposed to just being an independent and having maybe more flexibility, and maybe potentially even getting, particularly since I teach college, getting some younger voters?
I think there's an opportunity, and I would say now is the time to probably explore that. I'm term limited, And at this point, even as an independent, I'm not sure if the path is there to even move up, whether it's Senate, whether it's Congress, whatever. But we are seeing other states do that. We're seeing 2 senators from Minnesota, 2 state senators that recently went from being Democrats to independents. They represent northern Minnesota, where a lot of the mining is taking place. And we saw it in Pennsylvania. There's another House member there that went from a Democrat to an independent. So it is happening. I think there is certainly an opportunity there, but it's still a big risk in terms of, are you going to have that help and support system, or are you going to really be on your own?
Right.
And to me, you know, if there was a path, and if I was thinking seriously about another office, I might think about that. But, you know, right now, I think as I'm winding down my time in the House, I guess I'm not going to be the one to probably jump and do that, at least not right now. But I think if people are looking for that, there's certainly room for a candidate to do it.
I mean, knowing, since like I said, I teach college, I would think that if jumping from being one of the parties to being an independent and you're reaching for like a Senate or even something higher, it would be much harder because you don't have the infrastructure. And because like just the geography of a Senate race, you people do, you know, as for good or for bad, voters are looking for, you know, one or the other, because when you see a letter, an R or a D, it automatically brings ideas to your mind. And so I guess for people who are listening, like Marlene's question, I would say probably partly it's infrastructure, and it's how voters, they see a letter and they, you know, whether they know the candidate or not, that's how they're going to vote. So becoming an independent is a really challenging, and it, you know, some people are very successful at it, but it does take a lot of extra work.
Yes, I agree.
We had another question. Let's see, Joanne Galloway, who ran for the 107th, and we also interviewed, so thanks for joining, Joanne. She said, tell us a little bit about what your schedule looks like. Oh, that's a great question. So as a state legislator, just to like, what is the day in the life of Representative Cambensy? When you wake up, like, do you even, you know, obviously not driving to Lansing in the morning every single day. So what does it look like to be you in Lansing?
I will say that it changes every week, every day. You might have your same committees that meet at a set time. Sometimes those will change. The only thing that never really changes is session. You either have it or you don't, but the times are always the same. And you kind of work back from that. But, you know, you could have meetings set up. Something else comes up that week where your caucus is either meeting, or it has to do with a bill or legislation you're trying to pass, where you have to completely shift your entire day around. And so there isn't a set schedule. And I think someone coming from kind of a 9 to 5-ish job, working for the schools and going into this, you don't get to decide. I guess that's maybe the best way to sum it up is you have to kind of do and take the meetings that come your way, or you have to create them and reorganize to prioritize what is going to make you, you know, get the work done you need to do. And so sometimes I drive down on Monday evenings, sometimes Monday mornings. I have gotten up at 4 a.m. to drive down Tuesday mornings before committee, if even if I have to do things like rake my leaves, or, you know, get some of the house projects done that, you know, let's face it, we still all have to kind of have that separate life. And so it's a whirlwind that, again, every week. In fact, when I was trying to sign on to this meeting, I was on the previous week trying to get into that Zoom, and I thought, okay, this is why they're not letting me in. I'm in the wrong week. So it's very crazy. It's hectic. And even on your month or 2 month, you know, time off, that is your district time, and you're still in your car running and chasing meetings.
Do you sleep down at, like, you have an apartment down in Lansing, or? Because surely you're
I
not driving.
do.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So when I get down there, there's 4 of us as legislators. There's 2 of us as legislators actually, and 2 staff that rent a house. And
Cool.
it's kind of like going back to college, where you have people you live with. You're all kind of doing laundry at the same time, and maybe grabbing a meal together. But we're there very seldom. So our time together is either early in the morning or late at night, because really, as a legislator in Lansing, you could be busy every day from 7 a.m. until 9 at night. So it's nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah. Too bad you can't bring the dog, but with that kind of schedule, I don't think the
You know
puppy
what
would be
I
very
do?
happy. Do
Yeah,
you?
I do sometimes. This past week when I brought him, he was kind of like, okay, this 4-hour stretch when no one was here. Okay, it's kind of long.
Yeah.
So
I have to get one of those apps where someone can help walk the dog for you while you're
right.
doing the business. So we have one other question from Paul. It says, do you feel like the noise of politics gets in the way of the public's understanding of policy? And how do you circumvent that? Or is that an impossible challenge at times?
Absolutely. And it does feel impossible at times. Just dealing with COVID and trying to balance, situations that are outside of my control. The governor's relationship with the Republican majority leader and the House Speaker. Those are 3 people. And once they get in a room, they either agree, they disagree, they fight. That gets played out in public, and all of us as legislators go home, and our radio stations or TV stations call us and they say, explain that. And it's very hard, because I think without wanting to insert yourself in that, you do kind of have to explain to people what's going on. And some of it is 100% political. Some of it is jockeying for power. Some of it is simply just a difference of opinion, agreeing there's a problem, but disagreeing on how to solve it. And so, it's difficult, because I think people right now, especially with social media, they don't know what news source is really, a solid one that they can believe, and who's just putting articles out there that, certainly stir up everyone's emotions. And I will say that one thing I try to do as a legislator is try to turn that emotion off. I think when you're campaigning, it's certainly a strategy to get votes. But when you really bring that into governing, and you're using issues, to strike emotion out of people, it makes it that much harder. And I think that's the biggest, beef I have with just the politics of governing is, are people really doing what they're doing just to get more likes or clicks on their media site, or are they doing it to really inform people? And from everything that we have to do as legislators, it's very hard to also be kind of a non-biased media source for everyone too, because we've always relied on the media to, tell the story and let people decide. Now we seem to be telling people what to think. And you've got 20 different flavors out there, and people will grab onto each one of those.
Yeah, that's really hard. We're in a weird spot when it comes to all of that. I don't even know how you guys, the whole legislature, how all of it, you guys navigate that. So my heart goes out to you on that one.
Yeah.
We as league, we try to do our best when it comes to giving good information, especially about voting information and elections. So that's, the part that we like to play. But there's just, when you think about all the different public policies that you go across your desk trying to inform people. And then Paul added on to that question, which I think goes really well with this, is that because you have such a large district, and you have to set the record straight and do public education with every conversation. How hard is it to schedule meetings with your constituents? Is it, you're already really busy in Lansing. You want to have a personal life. So and then you have this giant district that you represent. How do you manage that?
I think being a state legislator has gone from, putting out press releases whenever there's a big event or a big thing that you're going to be at or support to, my office puts out press releases on where I stand, or we use it as a way to, send it out to the media to let them know how we're interpreting the issue and, maybe where we stand on it. Just as much as we are with trying to say, hey, I'm working on this bill or this legislation, because we just naturally have to take that time to help educate people or help get the story out there when, sometimes, our news sources up here might not even hear about things going on downstate, but because we have those online news sources, the Detroit News, MLive, the Free Press, people are finding them and they still want answers from us. So we do a lot of press releases just to stay on top of, kind of what's going on. And I did have someone say, how come you don't do more podcasts? And how come you don't do a weekly this or that? And I thought, well, the only time I could really do it is driving home. And
well, and take it from someone who used to co-host a podcast, that is a full-time job.
Right.
That is work.
Yeah. So, really, and I will say, being in the minority, I have less staff and less resources than, those in the majority. So it's, on top of that, it's a balancing act to just make sure that whatever your staff are assigned to do, that, it's benefiting you the most.
Yeah. Wow. So much.
Yep.
So with that, I'm going to ask two last questions, because we have learned that you have a very, very jam-packed schedule, which I already knew, but now it's just wow. So who were your role models, or people that you admire? So Paul is asking this question, and I really like it because it also will go and segue nicely with our last question with the books. But who are the people who you looked up to or continue to look up to in politics? And it could be local, state, or national, or international.
I will say that first and foremost, my parents. I think my dad, by saying, don't forget who you work for or what this job is. My brother is kind of a guy of few words. And so even when I ran for the city commission, he just looked at me and said, oh, well, just make sure you do the right thing and not the political thing, and you'll be able to sleep at night, and just kind of left it at that. To my mom, that, she's got the heart of a nurse. And so she, her best advice to me throughout this entire thing was, don't ever, give up your friends or give up those relationships with people, because they're all important. And it kind of goes into, why I guess I want to be a problem solver, why I don't want to go down there and be, just so partisan and only representing, Democrats and their views on things. Carl Levin was someone who said, if you didn't come to Washington to compromise, you might as well not come. And, I think there's truth in that. I mean, he was a powerhouse that could work with people and get stuff done and bring stuff back to his district. And, same with Jacob Betty. They weren't just hanging out with Democrats or just, kind of towing that line, which I think we see a lot more of people wanting us to do these days in politics. But I'm a big Joe Manchin fan, simply because he is the person that's slowing everything down to say, I want, whether or not you think the Republicans have treated us well as Democrats, I'm not willing to leave them out of negotiations, because what they're doing and who they represent is important. And we make better decisions when we get everyone's view around an issue and then decide the best path forward. So, those are the people I think in politics. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, fight for the things that you believe in, but do it in a way where you can bring people along. And, that's something that I think when I look back on my city commission run, I certainly believed in being very fiscally conservative and responsible with my vote on the hospital, because of the debt it brought to the city. But I didn't do such a great job of bringing some people along. And, even my commission members that I served with that were mad at me or, certainly didn't agree with me. Even they, as people who were previous mayors and had been around a long time, were, mentors to me, or people I looked up to in terms of how they governed and how they handled situations. So not just the people who have always supported me, but even the ones who have been critical, I think I've learned just as much from them.
Yeah, that's good. I think those are all good things to take in. Sometimes you need to be with people who don't always agree with you, and it challenges you and, forces you to think of issues in a different viewpoint. That's great. I love RBG. I love RBG.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So our last question is 2 books that you would recommend. So for, women supporting women, empowering women, what are 2 books that you would recommend to us?
Oh, gosh.
Or even just legislating. It doesn't have to be about women necessarily.
Yeah. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think all of her books that are coming out, I haven't got around to those yet. They're on my queue, but I think those, to me, just, the way that she was able to carry herself, and just kind of keep coming and standing up for women and women's rights, and, doing it in a way where one of her best friends was Scalia. I mean, it's just, there's so much there that I think can continue to be a life lesson, not just for me, but for many women. Right now I'm listening to John Tester and his book Grounded, and just the fight that he has, being really kind of the lone Democrat from his state, and what that feels like, going up, certainly when Trump was in office, but just kind of also remembering that, he's born and raised and just has to represent the people. So that one is kind of my grounding book. But also there's a book, No Labels, A Shared Vision for America. And, Bill Clinton is a big focus on that book, Joe Manchin, and just really talking about that bipartisanship, because I'm telling you, I don't think it's a good thing. I came in when all 3 branches here in Michigan were under the Republican Party, and I know that we were shut out of a lot of negotiations, or our voices weren't being considered at the table. I'm a little worried now that we have 3 branches, with the Democrats kind of in control in Washington. And again, I think that's why I gravitate towards Joe Manchin, is because he's trying to remind us that, just because we have that power doesn't mean we should exclude, differences of opinions. And so those are the things, I guess, that I try and read or listen to for books on tape that kind of keep me grounded or keep me humble and remind me of, that need to always see both sides of an issue.
That's good. I think that's good. And that goes back to our point about doing your research and the way you can get a better understanding. So awesome. Thank you, Representative Cambensy. I have learned a lot. This has been really wonderful. I feel like you just gave us like a really inside scoop about what it's like to do your role. And it's not easy at all. But that being said, I don't want to discourage women from supporting other women who want to run and who want to run themselves. It's really important that we have more women stepping up, being courageous, and being leaders in their community at whatever level that is.
Absolutely. And so if I can just make one ask, and that is of all the women, on this call, step up and, challenge yourself and push yourself to really give back in that public service role, whatever it is, whether it's school board, like you said, local commissions, or even running for a state office. I mean, push yourself to do it, because you'll never know if you don't try. And there were many times I thought, should I do this or shouldn't I? And I'm still very close with a lot of my friends from high school. And we were over there one night and my good friend said, you have to do this. I want you to do this. We all want you to do this because we know you can. And, you know, sometimes you just need a little push, but do it.
Yeah. How cool would that be to be with, go to high school with you and you get to years down the road, be like having a beer with you and be like, hey, let's talk about those bills. Now that sounds fun. I am envious of your high school friends.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, it is 1 o'clock. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and especially yours. But thank you so much for doing this. This recording is on YouTube and we'll also post it to the League's website, which is lwveup.org. But I really can't thank you enough. Thank you for being an inspiration and really doing service for our region. And it's a lot of work, but you're rocking it. And so thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for everything League of Women Voters does.
We love it. It's awesome. There's a lot of work to do.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great remainder of your lunch. And bye, Representative Cambensy. This has been wonderful.